And so, we settle in. You can feel your body beginning to grow heavy, in the most pleasant way, in our time together tonight. There is nothing to examine, nothing to understand, only the gentle rhythm of a story. The story of a time when medicine was a confusing and often frightening guessing game. A world desperately searching for a map, for a single, brilliant clue. All right, let the shadows in your room grow long and soft. Maybe you can hear the faint sound of your own breathing. And together, let's allow the story to begin. The first thing you notice is the smell. It's a permanent resident of your master's apothecary. A thick, dusty perfume of 100 different things, all pressed together. There's the sharp, clean scent of dried lavender hanging in bunches from the ceiling. The sweet, earthy smell of licorice root in a giant sack by the door. And underneath it all, a faint, metallic tang you can't quite place. Your world is a world of jars. Big glass jars, small clay pots, wooden boxes with tiny, intricate drawers. Each one holds a piece of a puzzle you don't understand. Your name is written on a smudged contract you can trade, and your job. So now, is simple. You pound things. You take the mortar and pestle, a heavy, cold stone bowl and its club-like partner, and you grind. You grind dried beetles until they are a shimmering, iridescent powder. You grind chalky white river clay. You grind peppercorns that make you sneeze for an hour straight. You don't ask what they are for. That is not your place. Your place is to grind, to sweep, to fetch, and to listen. Your master, a man whose face seems permanently creased with either deep thought or a mild stomachache, moves through this cluttered space like a ghost. He speaks in a mumble of Latin and local dialect, a language of his own invention. He'll point a long, bony finger at a jar and say something like, "A dram of the Draconis sanguis," and you have to remember that he means the lump of dark red resin from a tree you've never seen, not an actual dragon's blood. It's a bit of theatrical flair. You think everything here is. The medicine you help create is a confusing soup of theories. Your master still talks about the four humors. The ancient idea that the body is governed by four fluids: blood, phlegm, yellow bile, and black bile. A fever is too much blood, so you are sent to fetch leeches. A cough is too much phlegm, so the patient is given something spicy to burn it away. It's a neat system, but it feels incomplete. It doesn't explain why the mayor's wife has a sadness that no amount of balancing can fix, or why a simple cut on a farmer's hand can turn black and angry, defying all the rules. Sometimes, a wealthy traveler comes in, demanding the good stuff, the react. This is your master's pride and joy. A thick, black treacle stored in an ornate jar. He claims it contains over 60 ingredients. A secret recipe passed down from the time of the Roman emperors. You've seen him mix it. There's viper flesh in there, dried and powdered. There's cinnamon and myrrh, but also bits of things you'd rather not identify. It's supposed to be a cure for everything, from poison to a common cold. And yet, you've seen people take it and get no better. You've also seen people take it and recover. There is no pattern, no logic. It's a roll of the dice with a very high price tag. Historians still argue about this, about how much of your master's work was genuine belief, and how much was simply good business. A performance for a desperate customer, when he holds a flask of yellow liquid up to the light and proclaims it will purge the excess bile. Does he truly believe it? Or does he just know that a confident pronouncement is half the cure? You suspect it's a bit of both. He believes in the idea of medicine, even if the details are flexible. Today, a woman comes in with her young son. The boy's skin is pale, his breathing is shallow. Your master does the usual things. He holds a polished crystal to the boy's forehead. He tastes a drop of the boy's urine, a practice you are not looking forward to learning, and declares it's an imbalance of the cold and moist humors. He sells the mother a pouch of dried yarrow and a small, expensive vial of a bitter-smelling tonic. As she leaves, her face a mask of fragile hope, you feel a familiar sense of helplessness. It's all just guesswork, a tradition of guessing, passed down through generations. You look at the hundreds of jars, the bundles of herbs, the strange powders. It feels like standing in a library where all the books have been written in a language no one can read. The answers must be in here, somewhere. But there's no key, no guide, in this world without clues. Every cure is a shot in the dark, and every sunrise is a fresh reminder that you know nothing at all. The days bleed into one another, a blur of grinding, stirring, and the faint, ever-present anxiety that hangs in the air of the sick room. You are learning the rhythms of the shop, the way the light falls across the dusty floorboards in the late afternoon, the specific creak of the front door that signals a wealthy customer versus one with only a few pennies to their name. But the central mystery remains. The cures feel like throwing rocks into a pond and hoping to hit a fish. Mostly, you just make ripples. One evening, long after the shutters are barred, a visitor arrives. He doesn't use the front door, but the small, creaking kitchen entrance, tapping a code you didn't know existed. Your master lets him in with a sigh that is part annoyance, part resignation. The man is not a patient. He is a scholar, or perhaps a wanderer, his clothes dusty from the road, his face thin and sharp, with eyes that seem to see right through the jars and into the ideas behind them. They sit by the low fire, and you are permitted to stay, silently refiling their mugs of watered-down ale. The traveller speaks of new ideas spreading from the south, from the universities and printing presses of Germany and Switzerland. He talks of a man, a rebellious and loud doctor, who is banning the old books and proclaiming a new truth. Your master scoffs, swirling the dregs in his mug, the ramblings of a heretic. He mutters, he trusts the wisdom of peasants over Galen and Dobby Sama. He trusts the wisdom of God, the traveller says quietly, his voice a low hum against the crackle of the fire. And that's the part you're afraid of, old friend. He leans forward, and his gaze seems to include you for the first time. Imagine, he says, that when God created the world, he did not wish to see his children suffer. Imagine he looked upon all the sicknesses that would plague mankind and, in his infinite mercy, he placed the cure for each ailment right beside it, not hidden away, but in plain sight. You stop what you are doing, the rag in your hand motionless. He is a craftsman, is he not? The traveller continues. And what craftsman does not sign his work? Imagine every plant, every stone, every living thing carries a signature, a clue, a map, left for us to read, a divine mark that says, this is what I am for. The room is silent. The idea hangs in the air, so simple and yet so profound it feels like a physical weight. A world with clues. A world where the answers aren't locked away in unreadable Latin texts, but are written on the very face of nature. The traveller gestures to a pot in the corner, the weedy little plant with sawtooth that you are sometimes told to grind up for kidney complaints, though you have no idea why. Look at the saxifrage, he says. Where does it grow? On rocks, in the cracks of old stone walls. It breaks stones to live. Is it any wonder, then, that a tea made from its leaves helps a man pass a stone from his own body? It's like a thunderclap in the quiet of your mind. It's not a guess. It's a reason. A beautiful, elegant reason. The location of the plant is a part of its signature. That's the kind of strange, poetic detail that feels truer than any talk of balancing humours. Your master, however, is not impressed. That's folk nonsense, he grumbles. The ramblings of old women and hedge doctors. My grandfather used saxifrage because his grandfather used it. It's tradition. Not some divine riddle. Perhaps tradition is just a name for a riddle solved so long ago that we've forgotten the question. The traveller retorts gently. Historians, of course, are still picking apart this very argument. Was this incredible new idea truly the invention of one or two brilliant, rebellious minds in the heart of Europe? Or was it something that had always been there, a kind of unspoken, unwritten folk wisdom practiced by healers in small villages for centuries, which was only now being collected, formalized, and given a fancy, theological name. No one can say for sure. But for you, in this moment, the origin doesn't matter. What matters is the idea itself. It's a key. The key to the library you've been sweeping the floors of. Suddenly, the rows upon rows of jars behind you don't look like a collection of random ingredients anymore. They look like a shelf of unopened letters. The patterns on a leaf, the color of a flower's petals, the shape of a root pulled from the earth. They might not be accidents. They might be messages. Later, after the traveler has gone and your master has retired to bed, still grumbling about radicals and charlatans, you walk through the darkened shop. You run your fingers over the cool glass of a jar filled with deep red beetroot. You touch the rough bark of a cinnamon stick. You are no longer just an apprentice, a boy who pounds and fetches. You are a codebreaker, a detective, and you have just been handed your first clue in the greatest mystery of all. The traveler's words echo in your mind for days. A quiet hum beneath the daily noise of the pestle and the chatter of customers. You start to look at the world differently. The familiar herbs and roots in the shop are no longer just items on a list. They are suspects in a grand investigation. You find yourself staring at a pile of mustard seeds, wondering what their sharp taste is a signature for. You observe the feathery leaves of a fennel plant and try to imagine what inside the human body looks like that. It's a game at first, a secret you keep to yourself. Your master, still clinging to his humors and his expensive, old Turing the React, notices your distraction but mistakes it for daydreaming. One afternoon, he tasks you with cracking a bag of walnuts for some confection he's preparing for a wealthy client. It's a tedious job. You sit on a stool in the back, a small hammer in your hand, tapping each shell just hard enough to crack it without pulverizing the prize inside. You crack one open, and the two halves fall away cleanly. You pause. You've seen this 100 times, but today, you see it. You pick up one of the halves of the nut meat. It is a perfect, miniature brain. The thought is so sudden, so clear, that you almost drop it. There it is. The ridged and folded outer surface, like the cerebrum, the thin, paper-like membrane that separates the two halves, just like the one that divides the two hemispheres of the brain. The whole thing is even encased in a hard, protective shell, a tiny skull. It's not just a passing resemblance. It's an anatomical model, crafted by a playful god. This is it, the signature, not a subtle hint, but a bold, unmissable statement. Walnuts are for the brain. You can barely contain your excitement. You gather a few of the most perfect halves and, with your heart pounding in your chest, you approach your master. He is decanting a dark liquid, his brow furrowed in concentration. Master, you begin, your voice a little shaky. The walnuts. He glances over, annoyed at the interruption. What about them? Have you crushed them to dust? You clumsy OIF. No, master. Look, you hold out your palm, showing him the kernel. It looks like a little brain. He squints at it. For a moment, his stern expression softens. He takes the nut from your hand, turning it over with his long fingers. He sees it, too. You can tell by the flicker in his eyes. But then the mask of the traditionalist falls back into place. An amusing coincidence, he says, handing it back to you. Now, get back to work. These spice nuts won't pay for themselves. But his dismissal is too quick. The seed of the idea, the one the traveler planted, has found fertile ground in him as well, even if his pride won't let him admit it. Later that week, a man is carried into the shop. H.E.S. astronomist who fell from a scaffold. He is conscious, but dazed, with a nasty gash on his head that the barber surgeon has already stitched up. His wife is frantic. He's not right. Master apothecary, she wails. He doesn't know his own name. Your master examines the man, peering into his eyes, feeling the pulse at his wrist. He mutters about the humors being thrown into chaos by the shock of the fall. He prepares to mix a standard calming draft of valerian and hops. But as he reaches for the jars, his hand hesitates. His eyes drift, almost unconsciously, to the sack of walnuts in the corner. He looks at the sack. He looks at you. It's a silent, split-second decision. He tells you to fetch the walnuts. Not for a confection this time. He instructs you to grind them into a fine paste with a little honey and wine. He calls it a cephalic cake confection. It sounds important, professional. This, right here, is a fascinating and slightly absurd moment in medical history. The logic is so visual, so appealing. Of course, a brain-shaped nut must be good for the brain. It's an idea that has been around in folk medicine for ages. A quirky bit of trivia. But no, with this new doctrine of signatures giving it a grand theological framework, it's being elevated. It's becoming science. Some medical historians even argue that the nutritional value of walnuts, with their omega-3 fatty acids, might have had some minor, accidental benefit for brain health, creating a feedback loop where the cure appeared to work just often enough to reinforce the beautiful. But flawed logic. You watch as the mason's wife spoons the nutty, sweet paste into her husband's mouth. Will it work? You have no idea. But for the first time, the remedy doesn't feel like a random shot in the dark. It feels like you've read the instructions. You followed the divine map. You look at your own hands, still dusty with the powder from the mortar. You cracked the code, and it was hidden in plain sight, in the simple, humble shell of a walnut. The success of the cephalic cake infection, or rather, the fact that the stonemus did eventually remember his own name after a few days of rest and a great deal of the walnut paste, does not cause a revolution in the shop overnight. Your master is too proud to set in his ways, to suddenly renounce the teachings of the ancients that have been his bread and butter for 30 years. He doesn't mention the doctrine of signatures by name. He never admits that the traveler's words, or your observation, had any effect on him. But something has shifted. A small crack has appeared in the fortress of his tradition. He starts asking you questions. Not direct questions, but sideways ones. While sorting through a new shipment of dried herbs, he might hold up a stock of liverwort. Its 3 lobed leaves looking vaguely like the organ it's named for. And ask, what do the old women say this is for? He's outsourcing his curiosity to you. You are his safe way to explore this dangerous new idea without committing to it. And so, you learned that the traveler, the scholar who came to your door, was a follower of a man whose name was spoken with a mixture of awe and contempt in the medical world, Paracelsus. His real name was something long and wonderfully complicated. Philippa say you are Eo Elos Theophorstus Bombastus von Hohenemy. You can see why he shortened it. The name Paracelsus itself was a boast, meaning equal to or greater than Celsus, a famous Roman encyclopedist. This was not a man known for his humility. You hear stories about him, whispered by merchants and traveling students who passed through the town. They say he was a doctor who looked more like a soldier, always carrying a huge sword, which he claimed held the secret of life in its hilt. They say he lectured not in the sacred language of Latin, but in common German, so that any barber or midwife could understand him. This alone was a scandal. He publicly burned the books of Avicenna and Galen, the titans of traditional medicine, declaring that the hairs on his head knew more than all the ancient masters combined. You can just imagine the look on your own master's face at such a sacrilege. It's a miracle the man wasn't struck by lightning. Paracelsus, you learn, was the one who took the scattered, folksy ideas of signatures and forged them into a coherent, if eccentric, philosophy. He was the one who gave it its powerful theological spin. God, he argued, would not create a poison without also creating its antidote. And he marked them for us. It was a physician's duty not just to read old books, but to read the book of nature, to be a botanist, an astronomer, a mystic. The most radical part of his teaching, the part that makes your master deeply uncomfortable, is its democracy. If the clues are in the plants themselves, then you don't need a university to read them. a clever farmer, a wise woman living at the edge of the woods, a curious apprentice like you. Any of you might be able to see a signature that a learned doctor, his nose buried in a dusty tome, would miss. It was a revolution that threatened to put people like your master out of business. Of course, the man was a walking contradiction, and historians love to debate which version of him was real. Was he a pioneering genius who foreshadowed modern chemistry and pharmacology, or was he a loud-muted charlatan who got lucky a few times? The answer, as always, is probably somewhere in the middle. He championed the use of specific chemicals, like mercury and antimony, to treat specific diseases, a radical departure from the vague balancing of humors. This was the beginning of chemotherapy, in a way. But his reasoning was often tangled up in alchemy and mysticism. He believed, for instance, that the dosage was the key. He famously wrote, "All things are poison, and nothing is without poison. The dosage alone makes it so a thing is not a poison." It's a brilliant, profoundly modern insight. But it was often used to justify giving people highly toxic substances. You find a discarded pamphlet, printed on cheap paper, left behind by a traveler. It's a pirated summary of his teachings. You read it in secret, by candlelight, your heart racing. Paracelsus writes with the fire of a preacher. He calls the university doctors whited sepulchres. He declares that experience is the only true teacher, that a doctor should wander the land, learning from everyone and everything. He makes medicine sound not like a dusty profession, but like a heroic quest. You are swept up in it. This isn't the dry, fearful, uncertain medicine of your master. This is a gospel. A promise that the world is not a chaotic, meaningless place, but a divine text waiting to be read. You look up from the pamphlet, and the familiar apothecary shop around you seems different now. It's no longer just a place of business. It is a laboratory, a church, and a library of secrets, all rolled into one. And Paracelsus has just handed you the key. The change in the apothecary shop is subtle at first, like the turning of a season. It doesn't happen with a grand announcement, but in a series of small, almost imperceptible shifts. Your master, caught between his lifelong training and the undeniable pull of this new, elegant logic, begins to hedge his bets. He would never admit he is following the teachings of a man he considers a braggart and a heretic. But his actions betray him. He begins to reorganize. For years, the shop has been arranged by a logic you never quite understood. Perhaps it was by the cost of the ingredients, with the precious ambergris and pearls locked away, and the common chamomile left in open bins. Or maybe it was arranged by a system of humors. The hot spices in one corner, the cold herbs in another. Now, a new order begins to emerge. An order based on resemblances. One morning, he instructs you to move the jar of liverwort. No longer will it reside on the shelf with other leafy greens. You are to place it next to a small, dusty cask of wind rags and a pouch of reddish, iron-rich clay. You don't have to ask why. Liverwort, with its lobed shape, the deep red of the wine, the earthy color of the clay. They are all, in their own way, signatures for ailments of the liver and the blood. An entire shelf is slowly, quietly, becoming the liver shelf. It's a fascinating, if slightly mad, exercise in reorganization. The jar of kidney beans, once stored with other dried legumes, is moved to a new home next to the diuretic herbs like parsley and the stone-breaking saxifrage. The long, slender roots of the comfrey plant, which have a reputation for mending broken bones, are now stored beside powdered eggshells and chalk. It's like watching someone rearrange a library, not by the author's name, but by the emotional theme of the books. Your job changes, too. You are still the grinder and the sweeper, but now you're also a hunter, a signature seeker. Your master sends you out into the fields and forests not with a list of plants to gather, but with a list of problems. The baker's wife has a persistent cough. He will say, "Go and see what the fields have to offer." And so you go. You wander through the damp woods, but now you see it with new eyes. You are not just looking for a specific plant. You are looking for a sign. You find mosses that looks often spongy, like the inside of a healthy lung. You see the spotted leaves of a particular flower and wonder if it's a signature for sores or spots on the skin. You are reading the book of nature, just as Paracelsus commanded. This is a deep shift in the very practice of botany. Before, a plant was identified by its overall shape, its flower, its use. Now, the smallest detail could be the most important part. The way a leaf is veined, the color of its juice, the texture of its stem, all of these are potential clues. It's an intensely creative process. One herbalist might look at a plant and see one signature, while another, equally devout, might see a completely different one. One of the most peculiar and debated aspects of the doctrine was what to do with ugly plants. Many practitioners believed that the most gnarled, thorny, and unpleasant-looking plants must be designed to cure the most gnarled and unpleasant diseases. A thistle, with its sharp spines, was obviously a cure for a sharp, stabbing pain in the side. This is a level of poetic logic that is hard to argue with, even if it has no basis in reality. Back in the shop, your master puts your findings to the test, but always with a layer of plausible deniability. He'll take the spongy moss you found and mix it with traditional cough remedies like horehound and licorice. If the patient recovers, he can credit the old ways, but he'll give you a small, almost imperceptible nod. A shared secret. He is using you as his research assistant in a study he will never officially publish. The customers notice the change, though they can't articulate it. They see the new arrangements of the jars, the strange new combinations of ingredients and their remedies. But it's presented with such quiet authority that they accept it. When you hand a woman a poultice for her swollen joints made from the knobby roots of a plant, it just feels right. The cure looks like the disease. It makes a beautiful kind of sense that a complex discussion of yellow bile and phlegm never could. You are living through a quiet revolution. The world outside the apothecary door is the same. The sun rises. The church bells ring. People get sick. But, inside, the very architecture of knowledge is being rebuilt, shelf by shelf. It's a heady, exciting time. You feel like you are on the cutting edge of a new science. Every weed, every flower, every stone holds a potential miracle. The only trick is learning how to see it. The human heart, to you, it's a concept as much as an organ. You've never seen one. Of course, beyond the crude, almost symbolic drawings in a smuggled anatomy book. A simple, valentine-shaped blob with tubes sticking out. It is the seat of courage, of love, of life itself. And so, curing its ailments is the most noble, and most terrifying, task an apothecary can face. Following the elegant logic of the doctrine, the search for heart cures becomes a search for the color reddened for suggestive shapes. The world, you discover, is filled with them. Your master, now more openly embracing the new philosophy, sends you to gather foxglove. He has heard whispers that this plant, with its tall, proud stalk and bell-shaped flowers, has a powerful effect on the heart. He doesn't know why. The signature is a bit of a stretch for him. Some say the speckled pattern inside the flower resembles a blood disorder, but he isn't convinced. He's acting on a rumor, a piece of folk wisdom that a Paracelsian doctor might have picked up. You handle the plant with care. It's beautiful, but you know it's also dangerous. Children are warned away from the dead man's bells, while your master prepares a tincture, carefully measuring out a tiny amount of the leaf. He tells you the story of an old woman in a faraway county who used it to cure dropsy. The swelling of the body that you now understand is a failing heart. This is a classic example of the doctrine working, but for the wrong reasons. The plant, digitalis, is indeed a powerful cardiac stimulant. The folk wisdom was correct. The signature, however, was a post hoc justification, an attempt to fit an observed fact into a beautiful theory. Historians still marvel at this, how ancient healers, through generations of trial and error, stumbled upon a genuinely effective medicine. while the philosophers and doctors scramble to invent a poetic reason for why it worked. But other heart cures are more direct, their signatures more obvious. You are tasked with preparing a cordial tincture, a sweet, warming wine meant to bring cheer and strength to the heart. The ingredients are a roll call of the color red. You add powdered rose petals, the flower of love. You stir in crushed hawthorn berries, which grow in ruby red clusters. You add a pinch of precious saffron for its golden red color and a sliver of sandalwood for its reddish hue. The final concoction is a beautiful, deep garnet. Holding the bottle up to the light, you can't help but believe in its efficacy. It looks like liquid vitality. It feels like you've bottled the very essence of a strong and healthy blood. Then comes the tomato. A traveler from Spain brings a few of the strange, exotic fruits to the market. They are called love apples, and most people are suspicious of them. They are part of the nightshade family, like the deadly belladonna, and it's rumored they are poisonous. But a daring customer buys one for your master, hoping his knowledge can unlock its purpose. Your master holds the round, red fruit in his hand. In trade, he slices it open with a knife, and you both stare, mouths slightly agape. Inside, there are 4 distinct chambers, just like the 4 chambers of the heart described in the most advanced, and possibly heretical, anatomical texts. It's uncanny. It's a perfect, undeniable signature. This, of course, is a wonderfully absurd moment. The tomato, with its 4 chambers, became a key heart food in the lore of the Doctrine of Signatures. The fact that it has no specific effect on the heart whatsoever is irrelevant. The signature is too good to ignore. The logic is too beautiful. For a brief period, this suspicious new fruit from a new world is rebranded as a divine gift for cardiac health. You also learn about plants that bleed. You are sent to gather street, John's wort. When you crush the little yellow flowers between your fingers, they release a reddish, oily liquid. It looks for all the world like blood. This, your master explains, is a clear sign that the plant is for wounds, for staunching blood, or for purifying it from melancholic humors. You prepare an oil from it. The liquid a deep, satisfying red, and it becomes one of your most popular remedies for cuts and scrapes. You even hear it whispered that it helps with wounds of the soul, a signature for emotional hurts that cause a metaphorical bleeding of courage or joy. In this chapter of your apprenticeship, medicine is a form of poetry. You are not a chemist. You are a literary critic, analyzing the text of nature. You are learning that God does not write in straightforward prose, but in metaphor and symbol. A red berry is a drop of blood. A 4-chambered fruit is a tiny heart. A flower that weeps red is a balm for a wound. It's an enchanting way to see the world. It makes you feel connected to the divine, a partner in a sacred conversation. And if the cures sometimes fail, well, perhaps you simply misread the verse. Your training in reading the divine script of nature now takes a more delicate turn. You move from the broad, bold signatures of color and general shape to the intricate, microscopic details. The focus of your study becomes the eyes. Jove, your master asks, would God sign a cure for an organ so small, so complex, so precious? The answer, it turns out, is waiting for you in a dark, grassy meadow at the edge of town. You are sent to gather it, a tiny, humble plant that barely reaches your ankles. It's called eyebright. Even its name is a promise. You kneel down in the wet grass to get a closer look. The flowers are tiny, white, and deceptively simple. But as you peer at them, you see it. Each delicate petal is streaked with fine purple lines, like the blood vessels in a tired eye. And in the center of the flower, there is a distinct yellow spot, looking for all the world like a pupil. You let out a soft breath of wonder. It's not just a passing resemblance. It's a portrait. It's as if a miniature artist had painted a tiny, perfect eye onto every single flower. You can almost feel the divine intention, the playful wink from the Creator. This cannot be an accident. This is the most elegant signature you have ever seen. Back in the shop, you lay the small bouquet on the workbench. Your master picks one up, holding it close to his own eye, and a rare, genuine smile touches his lips. Yes, he says, his voice soft with reverence. This one is clear. There is no mistaking this one. The preparation of the eyebright remedy is treated with the care of a sacrament. You are taught to distill the flowers, capturing their essence in a few precious drops of water. This eyebright water is to be used as a wash, a gentle balm for tired, sore, or infected eyes. The logic is flawless. To cure the eye, you must use the flower that looks like an eye. The belief in eyebright's efficacy was, and is, incredibly persistent for centuries. It was the go-to remedy for ocular problems. And this is where the historical debate gets interesting. Was it all just placebo? Did the gentle act of washing the eye with any clean water provide some relief? Or was there more to it? Some modern herbalists suggest the plant has astringent properties, meaning it could cause tissues to contract, which might temporarily reduce redness and inflammation. So it's possible the remedy wasn't entirely useless. It might have offered just enough mild, temporary relief to powerfully confirm the belief in its signature. The patient would feel a slight improvement, look at the flower, and the connection would be sealed in their mind forever. The beautiful logic was validated by a tiny, ambiguous result. Your work with eyes doesn't stop with flowers. The doctrine, in its poetic frenzy, finds signatures everywhere. You are taught to prepare a powder from fennel seeds. Why? Because the seeds are shaped vaguely like a human eye. Furthermore, the great Roman writer, Pliny the Elder, had noted that snakes would eat fennel after shedding their skin, supposedly to restore their sight. The logic here is layered. An ancient observation is filtered through the new lens of the doctrine, and the shape of the seed clinches the deal. A story and a shape, working together, create a medical fact. There are other, more peculiar cures you learn about. You grind up the shells of snails. The reasoning is a bit more abstract. Snails have eye stalks that they can retract and extend, a sign of ocular health and renewal. Therefore, some part of the snail must be beneficial for the eyes. It's a signature based on action, on the spirit of the creature, not just its appearance. But eyebright remains the gold standard, the poster child for the doctrine's subtle genius. You find yourself prescribing the eyebright water with a genuine, unshakable confidence. When a scholar comes in, complaining of eyes strained from too much reading by candlelight, you don't just sell him a remedy. You show him the flower. You point out the little yellow pupil, the delicate red veins. You are not just an apothecary, you are a teacher, revealing a small piece of the world's sacred design. The cure is no longer just the liquid in the bottle. The cure is the story. It's the moment of recognition when the scholar looks from the flower to his own reflection in a polished piece of silver and sees the connection. In that instant, his hope is kindled, and you learn a powerful lesson. Sometimes, the most potent ingredient in any medicine is the belief that it will work. The little flower, with its perfect, painted eye, is not just treating the organ, it's treating the soul. Having mastered the fine art of reading flowers, your apprenticeship now leads you from the sunlit meadows into the deep, damp shadows of the old-growth forest. The air here is different, heavy with the smell of decaying wet earth. The problems you are sent to solve are deeper, too, not the strained eye of a scholar, but the racking, persistent cough of the woodcutter, the shortness of breath that plagues the elderly in winter. You are hunting for a cure for the lungs. Your master gives you a simple instruction. Look to the trees. The cure for the lungs hangs upon them. At first, you are confused. You examine the bark, the leaves, the roots. You see nothing that resembles the spongy, airy organs of the chest. But then, on the shaded side of an ancient oak, you find it. Clinging to the rough bark is a strange, leaf-like growth. It's a pale, greenish-gray, with a pattern of ridges and depressions that looks remarkably like the network of bronchial tubes, the branching pathways of the lung. It even has a slightly spongy, porous texture. This is lungwort, a type of lichens, a strange organism that is part fungus, part algae. It doesn't even have roots. It just clings to its host, breathing the air. The signature is breathtakingly direct. A plant that looks like a lung and lives on air must be the cure for the lungs. You carefully peel a piece from the bowl. It feels ancient, otherworldly. Back in the apothecary, your master nods in approval. He explains that this is a primary signature, one of the most trusted in the doctrine. The lichens is dried and powdered, then mixed with honey or steeped into a bitter tea. It becomes your standard prescription for all manner of chest complaints, from a simple cold to the more serious, persistent coughs that never seem to leave the old and the frail. The use of lungwort is a perfect case study in the power and persistence of the doctrine of signatures. It was used for respiratory ailments for centuries. Purely because of its appearance, modern science, of course, has found no particular medicinal compounds in this lichens that would have a significant effect on lung health. And yet, its legacy is so strong that its name, Lobaria pulmonaria, still contains the Latin word for lung. It's a ghost of an old idea, preserved forever in the language of science. This is also a place where historians debate the line between the doctrine and simple common sense. Did drinking a warm, soothing tea, soothing tea, help a person with a cough feel better? Absolutely. Did the addition of the impressive-looking lungwort powder, along with a confident explanation of its divine purpose, make that tea psychologically more potent? Almost certainly, the ceremony was as important as the substance. Your search for lung cures takes you to other corners of the forest. You learn to gather the leaves of a plant called mullein. The signature here is not one of shape, but of texture. The large, fuzzy leaves feel like a protective blanket. The logic is simple and comforting. This soft leaf will provide a soothing, protective layer to the inside of an irritated throat and chest. You dry the leaves, and patients are instructed to smoke them in a pipe, inhaling the healing fumes directly into the lungs. It's a startlingly direct application of a remedy, and one that feels both intuitive and slightly dangerous. You also learn a more abstract signature, Herhound, a bitter herb that has been used for cough since ancient times, is given a new justification under the doctrine. Its white, woolly flowers, your master explains, are a signature for clearing white phlegm from the chest. It's a signature of color and desired outcome, a bit more of a mental leap, but it fits the pattern. On one of your trips into the woods, you come across a strange, unsettling sight. On the forest floor, growing from the decaying stump of a tree, is a fungus. It is a pale, gelatinous mass, convoluted and folded in on itself. It looks disturbingly like a human brain. You remember the walnuts, and for a moment, you wonder if this is another signature for head injuries. You bring a piece back, wrapped in a large leaf. Your master examines it, then shakes his head. This is tremella, he says, which is butter. Some say it can be used for a quivering sickness, a tremor, because the fungus itself trembles like jelly, but it grows from dead wood. Be wary of signatures from things that feast on death. It's a fascinating, cautionary lesson. Not all signatures are created equal. The context matters. The source of the plant, its habits, its neighbors, all are part of the message. The divine text is more complex than you thought. It has footnotes and warnings. You go back to preparing the lungwort powder. The feel of the dry, papery lichens crumbling between your fingers. You feel a sense of profound order. The forest is not a chaotic tangle of life. It is a pharmacy. The cure for the tree dweller's lung is on the tree. The cure for the eye is in the field. The cure for the head is in a nutshell. Everything has its place. Everything has its purpose. And you, the humble apprentice, are learning to read the map. As you grow more confident in identifying the shapes and textures of God's pharmacy, Your master introduces you to a new, simpler rule. It's a kind of shortcut for the busy apothecary. A broad principle that can be applied quickly and with dramatic flair. It is the rule of color. The body, your master explains one morning, while examining a flask of a patient's urine, speaks to us in color. A man pale with fright, red with fever, black with cholera, or yellow with jaundice. If the disease shows us its color, it is a direct invitation from God to fight it with the same. And so begins your education in chromatic medicine. The first and most dramatic lesson is in treating jaundice. It's a frightening illness, turning the skin and the whites of the eyes a sickly, terrifying yellow. The cause is a mystery, blamed on a blockage of the liver or an excess of yellow bile. The cure, according to this new rule, is obvious. You must fight yellow with yellow. Your world becomes a quest for all things yellow. You are sent to the fields to gather the bright, sunny flowers of dandelions, not just the leaves or the roots, but the brilliant yellow heads. You pick celandine, a plant whose stem, when broken, oozes a shockingly vibrant yellow or orange sap. The signature here is a double whammy. The color is perfect, and its name, derived from the Greek word for the swallow, is linked to an ancient belief that the mother swallow uses it to give sight to her young, a plant for sight that is also yellow. It must be a powerful medicine for the yellowing of the eyes in jaundice. You gather the golden petals of calendula and the bright stamens of crocuses to make saffron. The apothecary's shelves are rearranged once again, a vibrant yellow section taking shape. Turmeric, a root from the Far East that produces an intensely yellow powder, becomes one of your most prized and expensive remedies for liver complaints. When a patient with jaundice comes in, the treatment is a spectacle of color theory. They are given a tea of yellow flowers. They are fed a pottage colored with saffron and turmeric. Your master might even advise them to wear yellow clothes and to sit in a room with yellow curtains, to surround themselves with the healing color. It's a holistic approach that treats the patient's environment as an extension of the medicine. Of course, this is where the doctrine of signatures veers into territory that is undeniably undangerously wrong. While some of the prescribed yellow herbs, like dandelion, are diuretics and might have had a mild, incidental effect on the liver, the core principle was utterly flawed. The yellow color of the plants has no connection to the bilirubin that causes jaundice, that the visual logic was so powerful, so satisfactorily symmetrical, that it was accepted as gospel. Historians often point to this, like cures like color theory, as one of the doctrine's most beautiful and most tragic mistakes. It's a perfect example of humanity's desire to find patterns and meaning, even where none exist. We are aesthetic creatures, and the idea of fighting a yellow disease with a yellow flower is far more appealing than a complex, invisible chemical interaction. The color theory extends beyond yellow. You learn that red flowers, like the poppy, are not just for the heart, but for any ailment involving blood, especially those of women. White plants, like the pale roots of the Solomon seal, are for pale skin or for purifying the white humors like phlegm. Black substances are the most difficult and dangerous. The dark, gnarled roots of the black hellebore are a powerful and toxic purgative, thought to be a signature for purging the black boil of melancholy. Your master uses it only sparingly, and with great fear. You even learn a strange piece of reverse logic. If a patient is too hot and dread with fever, you are not to give them red flowers, which would add more fire. Instead, you must give them plants with cool, watery colors, the pale blues of borage or the coming whites of chamomile. You are learning the subtleties of the language. Sometimes you match, sometimes you can trust. The art is in knowing when to do which. One afternoon, you are pounding turmeric root into a fine, golden dust. The powder gets everywhere, staining your hands, your apron, and the floor around you a brilliant yellow. You look like you have a bad case of the disease you're trying to cure. For a fleeting moment, the absurdity of it strikes you. Are you really helping people by covering the world in a coat of yellow paint? But then you deliver the remedy to the worried family of a jaundiced man. You see the hope in their eyes as they look at the vibrant, golden powder. It looks like concentrated sunshine. It looks like life. And you realize, once again, that you are not just selling a ground-up root. You are selling a story. A simple, beautiful, and powerfully reassuring story of how to chase the darkness away with a little bit of light. Your confidence in the doctrine is growing daily. You see its logic confirmed everywhere, in the field, in the forest, and in the faces of grateful customers. The world is an open book, and you are finally learning to read. But then, one day, the book presents you with a paradox, a beautiful, terrifying chapter that doesn't seem to fit the rest of the story. It begins with a visit from a nobleman's steward. The nobleman's young heir, a boy of about 10, is suffering from a weakness of the heart. He is prone to fainting spells and his heart sometimes beats with a frightening, frantic rhythm. The steward is desperate. They have tried all the usual cordials and red-colored remedies to no avail. He has heard that your master is an innovator, a man who reads the hidden signs of nature. He is willing to pay anything for a true cure. This is a high-stakes case. The patient is important. The reward is great, and the risk of failure is immense. After the steward leaves, your master paces the floor of the apothecary, his brow deeply furrowed. He doesn't reach for the hawthorn berries or the rose petals. He walks to a locked cabinet in the back, a place where he stores the most potent and dangerous substances. He takes out a small, unassuming bunch of dried leaves and flowers. He lays them on the workbench. It is foxglove. You recognize it immediately. You've seen it growing wild. Its tall, elegant spires of bell-shaped, purple flowers, and you know its signature. It is one of the most perfect and dangerous you have ever encountered. The flowers, with their speckled throats, look like a diseased organ. Some say they resemble a human mouth and throat, a signature for choking fits. But the most compelling signature, the one whispered about by the most daring Paracelsian doctors, is that the shape of the bell-like flower, the foxglove or fairy glove, is a perfect fit for a human finger, and since fingers are used to take a pulse, the plant is therefore a signature for regulating the pulse in the heart. The logic is intricate, poetic, and utterly terrifying, because everyone knows that foxglove is poison. The dose makes the poison. Your master mutters, more to himself than to you, quoting the famous saying of Paracelsus. He is wrestling with the central conflict of the doctrine. What do you do when God's signature is placed upon a killer? This was a profound theological and practical problem for the followers of the doctrine. Did God make a mistake? Was it a test of faith, to see if a physician was brave enough to use a poison for good? Or was the signature itself a warning, a sign to stay away? The debate raged. Some argued that the poison was the very source of the plant's power. It had to be strong enough to kill in order to be strong enough to cure a deadly illness. Others believed that these plants were demonic traps, false signatures designed by the devil to lead healers astray. There was no easy answer. You watch, your own heart beating a little faster, as your master begins the perilous process of preparing the medicine. This is not like making a simple tea. He takes a single dried leaf, no bigger than your thumb, and grinds it into a fine powder. Then he begins to measure. He uses a tiny, delicate scale, the kind used for weighing gold. Adding a minuscule amount of the foxglove powder to a large volume of sweet wine, he works with a level of concentration you have never seen before, his hand steady, his lips moving in a silent prayer or calculation. He is walking a razor's edge. Too little, and the medicine will have no effect. Too much, and he will stop the young nobleman's heart for good. The line between a remedy and a poison is almost invisibly thin. This is the moment where the beautiful, aesthetic theory of the doctrine crashes into the brutal reality of pharmacology. Foxglove contains digoxin, powerful cardiac glycosides. In tiny, controlled doses, they can strengthen the heart's contractions and regulate its rhythm. In slightly larger doses, they cause nausea, vision disturbances, and fatal arrhythmia. Your master, without knowing any of these chemical names, is attempting to perform modern pharmacology using Renaissance tools and mystical philosophy. It's like trying to defuse a bomb while reading a poem for instructions. He finally finishes, bottling the medicated wine in a small, dark vial. He gives you stern instructions for the steward. 1 teaspoon, and only 1, in the morning. Watch him. If his vision blurs, or if he sees halos around the lights, stop immediately. Do you understand? Immediately. You nod. Your throat dry. You have crossed a new threshold in your apprenticeship. The Doctrine of Signatures is not just a gentle game of matching shapes and colors. It has a dark side. It leads you into dangerous territory, demanding not just wisdom, but incredible courage. It asks you to trust the signature, even when every instinct screams that you are holding a poison in your hand. Flower-painted book of nature suddenly contains a chapter written in a much darker, more menacing ink, and you are beginning to realize that reading it correctly is a matter of life and death. The days after you dispense the foxglove tincture are tense. Every knock on the door makes you jump, expecting the grim-faced steward to return with terrible news. But he doesn't. A week later, he comes back, his face alight with joy. The young heir is much improved. His fainting spells have ceased. Your master's dangerous gamble has paid off. The success emboldens your master, and the principles of the doctrine are pushed into new, harder territory. If a soft leaf can soothe a lung, and a red berry can strengthen the blood, what does God use to mend the very framework of the body? The bones, the joints, the teeth, the hard, unyielding structures of life. The search is on for cures that are as tough as the ailments they are meant to treat. Your expeditions into the wild now have a different focus. You are no longer just looking for delicate flowers and soft leaves. You are instructed to dig, to break rocks, to find the hard cures. Your first lesson is in the power of the root. You are sent to a patch of marshy ground to dig up comfrey. The plant itself is unremarkable, but the root is the prize. It's thick, black, and gnarled. When you cut it, it oozes a thick, mucilaginous slime. The signature here is to fold. First, its common name is knit bone. The name itself is a promise, a folk memory of its use. Second, the slimy sap, your master explains, is like the fluid that lubricates the joints and the glue that the body uses to mend a fracture. You dry the roots and grind them into a powder, which is then mixed with water to form a thick, dark poultice. It is spread onto broken limbs, wrapped in cloth, and left to harden into a kind of medicinal cast. The belief in comfrey's ability to heal bones was incredibly strong, and interestingly, modern science has shown that comfrey contains compounds like alanoid, which can promote cell proliferation, while it can't magically knit a broken bone back together. Applying it to the skin might have had some antifoam-bantian tissue healing effects on the surrounding area. Again, it's a case where the doctrine provided a beautiful reason for a practice that may have had a tiny grain of actual, physical effect, just enough to keep the belief alive. Next, you move from the hardness of roots to the hardness of stone. This is a stranger, more alchemical branch of the doctrine. Your master tasks you with gathering St. John's bones, which are not bones at all, but the fossilized stems of ancient sea lilies. They look uncannily like vertebrae, tiny, ridged discs of stone. The signature is unmistakable. These stone bones must be a cure for ailments of the spine and joints. You spend hours grinding them down with a mortar and pestle, a frustrating task that fills the air with a chalky dust. The powder is mixed into wine and drunk as a treatment for back pain and arthritis. The idea that you could ingest stone to strengthen bone is a powerful piece of sympathetic magic. This practice wasn't just limited to fossils. You also learned to prepare lapis judaicus, or Jews stone, a fossilized sea urchin spine that was thought to dissolve kidney and bladder stones. The logic here is like dissolves lichen away, a stone from the earth to break a stone in the body. The world of teeth provides its own set of signatures. For a toothache, You are taught to use cloves. The small, dried flower bud looks like a tiny tooth with a root. More importantly, when you chew on it, it releases a powerful, numbing oil. This is one of the most successful and enduring signatures of all, as clove oil is still used as a temporary dental analgesic today. But the doctrine wasn't satisfied with just one cure. You also learned about pomegranate. A pomegranate, with its countless seeds packed together like teeth in a jar, was seen as a major signature for dental health. The juice was used as a mouthwash to strengthen the gums and prevent the floss. One day, your master shows you a piece of stone he keeps locked away. It's not from the earth, he explains. It was taken from the stomach of a goat. It's a bezoar, a mass of undigested hair and fiber. Bezoar rests were considered one of the most powerful antidotes to poison in the world. Their signature derived from the belief that an animal which could form such a thing in its gut must have an innate ability to resist toxins. They were worth more than their weight in gold. You look at the lump of fossil, the powdered stone, the gnarled root. Your understanding of medicine is expanding. It's not just about the gentle life of plants, it's also about the slow, plowed, ancient life of the earth itself. The cures are not all soft and easy to harvest. Some you have to fight for, digging them from the dirt, breaking them with hammers, grinding them with all your strength. The body is a house, and to repair its foundations, you need more than just leaves and flowers. You need stone and bone. Your education in the doctrine of signatures now takes a turn towards the heavens. Having learned the language of the earth, the shapes of leaves, the colors of flowers, the hardness of stones, you are now taught that these terrestrial signs are intimately connected to the great, silent dance of the cosmos. The moon, in particular, holds a special sway over the world of medicine. Your master begins to speak of the moon's influence, its pull on the tides of the ocean and the tides within the human body. He explains that women, with their monthly cycles, are especially under the moon's dominion. Therefore, the cures for their specific ailments must carry the signature of the moon. This introduces a new, mystical layer to your work. You are no longer just a botanist. You are becoming an astrologer. The search for cures becomes a search for plants that reflect the moon's pale light, its crescent shape, or its psychical nature. Your first lesson in lunar botany is the lunaria, or honesty plant. In the autumn, the plant produces the most remarkable seed pods. They are flat, circular, and are beautiful, silvery white, like a perfect, shimmering full moon. You are sent to gather them, and you hold them up to the light, marveling at the signature. It's so clear, so poetic. These moon pennies are considered a powerful tonic for regulating women's cycles and ensuring fertility. You carefully detach the silvery discs, which are ground into a powder or simply sewn into a small pouch for the patient to wear as a talisman. Next, you learn about plants that follow the moon's rhythm. You are shown the evening primrose, a plant whose pale yellow flowers only open at dusk, as if to greet the rising moon. This nocturnal blooming is a powerful signature, marking the plant as a friend to the night and its celestial ruler. The oil from its seeds becomes a prized remedy for female complaints, from menstrual cramps to the melancholy that sometimes accompanies the monthly cycle. The shapes of leaves also hold lunar clues. You are taught to identify plants with crescent-shaped leaves or flowers, seeing them as miniature echoes of the horned moon. The feathery, arching fronds of the fern, a plant that thrives in damp, shaded, lunar places, are also gathered for these purposes. This intersection of botany and astrology is a point of great fascination for historians. Was the astrology a later addition, a way for learned doctors to make the folk wisdom of the doctrine seem more complex and scientific? Or was the belief in cosmic influences an ancient and integral part of the system all along? The lines are blurry. Paracelsus himself was a firm believer, stating that a physician who knew nothing of the stars was a fool. He taught that every plant was not just signed by God, but also ruled by a planet, and that a truly effective medicine had to be harvested at the correct astrological time. For instance, A lunar plant for a woman's health should be gathered at night, when the moon is full. One day, you are tasked with preparing a special remedy for the wife of a wealthy merchant who has been unable to conceive a child. The preparation is a ritual in itself. You must use the silvery lunaria pods, the seeds of the evening primrose, and the powdered root of a plant called moonwort, a small fern whose leaflets are distinctly crescent-shaped. Your master instructs you to prepare the mixture not by the heat of the fire, but by the cold light of the full moon, leaving the bowl on a windowsill overnight to soak up its virtue. It feels like magic, as you mix the ingredients under the pale, ethereal glow. The ordinary apothecary shop is transformed into a sacred space. The silence of the night, the cool air, the silver light, it all becomes part of the medicine. You are not just combining powders, you are channeling cosmic energy. Of course, the moon has no special influence on the chemical compounds in the plants, and yet, the power of the ritual is undeniable. For the woman receiving the remedy, knowing that it was prepared under the full moon, by an apothecary who understands the secrets of the cosmos, adds an immense psychological weight to the cure. Her hope is not just in a plant, but in the very order of the universe. You also learn about the more ambiguous signatures of the moon. Pearls, with their pale, luminous sheen, are considered a powerful lunar medicine, ground into a powder and added to expensive tonics for noble women. Even the simple lettuce, with its high water content and cool nature, is classified as a lunar plant, useful for calming hysterical or overly passionate conditions attributed to a misaligned lunar influence. Your understanding of the world is deepening, becoming more layered and complex. A plant is not just a plant. It is a word in a divine sentence, and that sentence's meaning is influenced by its position on the page of the earth, and the light, be it from the sun or the moon, that illuminates it. You look up at the moon in the night sky, no longer seeing just a rock, but a silent partner in your work, a gentle, silvery guide in the art of healing. The doctrine of signatures has become the bedrock of your world. It is elegant, it is beautiful, and, for the most part, it seems to work. The stoner mason with the head injury recovered, the nobleman's heir with the weak heart improved. The merchant's wife who took the lunar remedy is, so the rumors say, now with child. Each success is a confirmation, another brick in the solid foundation of your belief. But a foundation built on poetry is bound to have a few cracks. And one day, a case comes into the shop that shakes the entire structure to its core. It's the height of summer, and a wave of sickness is moving through the town. It's a violent, intestinal complaint, what the old folks call the bloody flux. It's swift, debilitating, and frightening. The afflicted suffer from terrible cramps and weakness, and they waste away with alarming speed. Your master is grim but confident. The signature for this illness is clear, one of the most ancient and trusted in all of herbalism. The ailment is red, so the cure must be red. He sends you out to gather tormentil. You find it growing low to the ground in the pastures outside the town walls. It's a humble plant, but when you dig up its root, you understand its name. The rootstock is thick and reddish, and when you cut it, it bleeds a dark, blood-red sap. The name itself, tormentil, comes from the Latin word for torment, because it was the go-to cure for the torments of the gut. The signature is perfect, a bleeding root to stop the bleeding. You bring back baskets of it. The apothecary becomes a factory for the tormentil remedy. You wash and chop the red roots, boil them for hours to create a dark, astringent decoction, and powder the dried leftovers to be mixed with wine. Your hands are stained red from the work. You are, quite literally, creating the cure that God has signed for this very purpose. You dispense it to dozens of people. The frantic mother of a sick child, the worried wife of a weaver, the master of a household where half the servants are afflicted. You explain the signature to them, showing them the bleeding root, explaining its divine purpose. You give them not just a bottle of dark liquid, but a powerful dose of hope. And then, it fails. It doesn't just fail in one or two stubborn cases. It fails spectacularly. It fails across the board. The patients who take the tormental remedy are no better off than those who take nothing at all. They continue to weaken. The sickness continues its relentless course. The first death is a child, then an old man, then a young, strong weaver. The bell in the church tower begins to toll with a dreadful regularity. The confident pronouncements you made just days ago now echo in your mind as cruel, empty promises. The beautiful logic of the signature feels like a mockery. You showed them the bleeding root, and still, they bled. This is the brutal reality that the historical narrative often smooths over. For every charming story of a cure that happened to work, there were countless tragedies where the most elegant theories collided with a merciless pathogen. The bloody flux could have been any number of things, a virulent strain of dysentery, for example, for which an astringent root was simply no match. Historians still debate how practitioners of the doctrine reconciled these massive failures. Did they blame the patient's constitution, the astrological conditions? Did they claim the herb was harvested improperly? Or did they, in the quiet of the night, suffer a crisis of faith? Your master is a changed man. The confident authority is gone, replaced by a quiet, haunted desperation. He retreats to the old ways, mixing up complex theracs with dozens of ingredients. A shotgun approach, hoping one of them might hit the mark. He talks again of balancing the humors, of purging and sweating. It's a frantic return to the old, familiar guesswork, because the beautiful new system has proven to be nothing but a beautiful lie. One evening, a woman whose child you had given the tormental remedy to just a week before comes back to the shop. Her eyes are red-rimmed and empty. The child is gone. She doesn't scream or shout. She just holds out the half-empty bottle. "The root bled," she says, her voice hollow, but my son did not stop. She places the bottle on the counter and walks away, leaving a silence that is heavier and more damning than any accusation. You stare at the bottle of dark red liquid, the perfect signature, the divine promise. It looks like poison now. For the first time, a seed of true, corrosive doubt is planted in your mind. It's a terrifying thought. What if the book of nature is not a guide, but just a collection of random, meaningless shapes and colors? What if you haven't been reading a map, but just seeing faces in the clouds? The elegant, ordered world you had come to believe in begins to crumble at the edges, and you are left with the chilling realization that a beautiful idea can't stop a child from dying. The failure of the tormental cure leaves a scar on the apothecary and on your soul. The confident certainty that once filled the shop has been replaced by a quiet, cautious humility. Your master is more withdrawn, less likely to make grand pronouncements. The doctrine of signatures, once hailed as a revolutionary key, is now treated with suspicion, like a friend who has betrayed a trust. It has been abandoned entirely, but its supremacy is broken. Into this climate of doubt, a new book arrives. It's not bought by a dusty wanderer, but purchased at great expense from a traveling bookseller. It's a large, handsome volume, bound in leather. Its pages filled with the familiar teachings of the doctrine, but it contains a new, bewildering layer of complexity. It is an almanac of astrobotany, a detailed guide to the celestial rulers of the plant kingdom. If the basic doctrine was a simple language, this is its dense, academic grammar. You learn that it's not enough to know a plant's signature. You must also know which of the 7 classical planets, the Sun, the Moon, Mercury, Venus, Mars, Jupiter, or Saturn, governs it. This planetary ruler, the book explains, determines the plant's true nature, its sympathies and antipathies. Your master, perhaps seeking a reason for the torment-ILS failure, latches onto this new system. Maybe the signature was right, that the timing was wrong. Maybe the celestial influences were not aligned. It's a way to salvage the theory, to explain its inconsistencies without abandoning it altogether. And so, your education begins anew. You learn to see the planets reflected in the plants. Plants ruled by the sun are proud, golden, and heart-shaped, like the sunflower or the calendula. They are for ailments of the heart, the blood, and for promoting general vitality. They are regal plants. Plants ruled by the moon are pale, watery, and grow in damp places, like the lunar plants you already know. They are for the stomach, the moon, and for calming the emotions. Mars, the red planet of war, rules over the most aggressive plants, those that are thorny, sharp-tasting, and reddish in color. Nettles, thistles, and peppers, they are for treating martial complaints, fevers, rashes, burns, and the results of violence. Tormentil, you learn with a pang of guilt, is a plant of Mars. Perhaps it was too aggressive for the weakened systems of the sick children. Venus, the planet of love, governs the beautiful and gentle herbs, those with soft leaves, lovely flowers, and sweet smells. Rose, verbena, and wild thyme, they are for beauty, love, and macadamia, which are seen as the seat of affection. Mercury, the messenger god, rules plants that are finely detailed, with intricate leaves and many small flowers, like fennel, dill, and parsley. They are for the brain, the tongue, and the nervous system, the organs of communication. Jupiter, the great king of the gods, rules over the large, stately, and beneficial plants. The mighty oak tree, the liver-healing dandelion, and the sage plant, they are for the liver, the lungs, and for bringing luck and expansion. And finally, Saturn, the old, slow planet of death and restriction, rules the dark, gnarled, and poisonous plants, the woody roots, the dull-colored leaves, the slow-growing and often toxic species like black hellebore and the deadly nightshade. They are for bones, teeth, melancholy, and for endings. It's a system of breathtaking complexity and symmetry. It's also, as historians point out, a system that was never fully agreed upon. One famous English herbalist, Nicholas Culpeper, created the most comprehensive guide, but his classifications were constantly debated. Was the lungwort lichens ruled by Jupiter for its healing properties, or Mercury for its resemblance to the communicative pathways of the lung? The arguments were endless. It was a science with no fixed answers, based on interpretation rather than observation. Your job becomes infinitely more complicated when a patient comes in. You must now consider not only the physical signature, but also the planetary nature of the illness. Is a skin rash a hot Martian affliction that needs to be cooled by a watery moon plant or a gentle Venusian one? Or is it a Saturnine restriction of the skin that needs to be opened by a jovial herb? Harvesting becomes a ritual. A root ruled by Saturn must be dug up in the dead of night, when Saturn is high in the sky. A flower ruled by Venus should be picked in the early morning, on a Friday Venus day, in the hour of Venus. You consult starch charts and almanacs. Medicine is now inseparable from astrology. You try to apply this new knowledge to the great failure. The bloody flux was a violent, hot disease, clearly Martian. The tormentil root you used is also a plant of Mars. The book says this is a dangerous combination. A Mars herb for a Mars disease adds fire to fire. It warns. You should have used a cooling, soothing plant of Venus or the moon to counteract the Martian heat. It's a perfect explanation. It preserves the doctrine of signatures while explaining the failure. It wasn't that the signature was wrong. It was that your understanding was incomplete. You were reading the words, but you didn't understand the grammar. The guilt you feel is immense, but it's also mingled with a strange sense of relief. There is an answer. The system still works. It's just far more complicated than you ever imagined. The intricate new system of planetary rulers and signatures doesn't remain confined to the apothecary shop. Like a dye dropped into water, it slowly seeps out, coloring the world around it. You begin to see its logic not just in the medicine vials on your shelves, but in the pots and pans of the kitchen. The line between a remedy and a meal starts to blur. It begins with the wealthy customers. The lady of the manor, having been prescribed a Venusian herb for her skin, starts demanding that her cook prepare her meals with other Venus-ruled ingredients to enhance the effect. The gout-ridden merchant, told his ailment is a fiery Martian complaint, is advised to avoid hot Mars-ruled foods like garlic, onions, and mustard, and to instead eat cooling foods governed by the moon, like cucumbers and melons. The doctrine of signatures is becoming a dietary plan. Food is no longer just for sustenance or pleasure. It is a form of preventative medicine, a daily balancing of cosmic and terrestrial forces. You find yourself giving as much culinary advice as medicinal. The walnut is for the brain. You explain to a student, so you should eat a handful before your studies. It is ruled by the sun, so it will bring illumination. To a man with a weak chest, you suggest a soup thickened with pearl barley. Each grain, you say, showing him one, is shaped like a tiny, polished lung. It is ruled by Jupiter and will bring strength. This idea, that you are what you eat in a very literal, symbolic way, was immensely popular. It gave people a sense of control over their health in a world with very little of it. Historians see this as a key moment in the history of food and nutrition, where magical thinking laid the groundwork for the idea that diet and health are linked. The reasons were wrong, but the conclusion was, in a broad sense, right. Eating a variety of plants is good for you, even if you're doing it because one looks like a liver and another looks like an eye. The kitchen becomes a kind of secondary apothecary. The cook's herb garden is now a medical cabinet. Sage, a Jupiter-ruled plant known to promote longevity, is rubbed onto meats. Rosemary, a sun-ruled herb for memory and circulation, is baked into bread. The humble carrot, you learn, becomes a subject of some debate. Its golden orange color links it to the sun and the heart. But some argue its feathery leaves are a signature for the lungs, linking it to Mercury. And its earthy root nature gives it a touch of Saturn. Eating a carrot is a complex astrological event. Some of the dietary advice is wonderfully strange. Artichokes, with their layered, protective leaves culminating in a soft heart, were considered a food for strengthening one's emotional and physical heart. A plant of Venus, asparagus, with its spear-like shape, was, perhaps predictably, seen as a Martian food that would enhance a man's vigor. You even see the doctrine influencing the drinks people consume. Wine, being red, is a cordial for the blood, but a white wine, being pale, is considered more lunar and cooling. Beer, made from grains like barley, is a Jupiter-ruled beverage, meant to be nourishing and strengthening. One of the most peculiar examples you encounter is the whole hog approach to eating an animal. The logic of signatures was extended to beasts as well. If you had a weakness of the leg, you should eat the leg of a swift-running animal like a deer, to sharpen your eyesight. You should eat the eyes of an eagle or a hawk. This like-cures-like idea, applied to cannibalizing an animal's strengths, is a very ancient form of sympathetic magic that the doctrine simply absorbed and repackaged with its more sophisticated, pseudoscientific language. You visit the market one day, and you see it with completely new eyes. The woman selling beets is, whether she knows it or not, selling a cure for the blood. The man with a cart full of cabbages, a plant whose head-like shape links it to Mercury, is a purveyor of brain food. The entire market is a living illustration of the doctrine, a place where people purchase their daily dose of signatures. You are preparing a poultice in the shop one afternoon, grinding up comfrey root for a broken bone, when a farmer comes in to buy a bit of horehound for his cough. While he waits, he munches on a handful of almonds. He catches you looking and grins. The wife says they're good for the lungs. He says, holding one up, "See, looks just like one, doesn't it?" He has no idea about Paracelsus or planetary rulers. He has never read a book on the subject, but the idea has trickled down, from the learned doctors to the apothecaries, to the kitchens of the wealthy, and finally to him. It has become folk wisdom, a simple, self-evident truth. The beautiful, Forward logic of the doctrine is no longer just a medical theory. It's on everyone's dinner plate. The spread of the doctrine of signatures throughout the town does not go unnoticed or unchallenged. While many embrace its elegant logic, others cling to the old ways with a fierce loyalty. The most vocal of these is the town's other apothecary, a stout, red-faced man named Master Hemlock. No, that wasn't his real name, but it's what your master called him, so it's the only one you know. Hemlock is a staunch traditionalist. He believes in Galen, the four humors, and the 60-plus ingredients of his own laureate, which he claims is superior to yours. For years, the rivalry between the two shops has been a quiet, simmering affair of stolen customers and whispered insults. But now, with the town divided between the old ways and the new, the conflict spills out into the open. It happens one market day, in the shadow of the church. Your master is there, speaking to a farmer about the Jupiter-ruled properties of sage, when Hemlock appears. A small crowd of his own loyal customers in tow, still peddling your peasant superstitions. I see, Hemlock bellows, his voice echoing across the square, telling folk to cure their heads with nuts and their lungs with moss. It's the talk of charlatans. Your master, who normally avoids confrontation, draws himself up. I am teaching them to read the book God has written for us, he retorts, his voice tight, while you are content to blindly recite from dusty texts written by pagans 1,000 years ago. And so begins a war of words, a public debate on the very soul of medicine. It's a fascinating spectacle. Hemlock, confident and booming, lays out the classical theory. The body is a balancer for humors. Sickness is an imbalance. The cure is to restore that balance through purging, bleeding, and remedies designed to be hot, cold, wet, or dry. It's a closed, complete system. It is, he argues, logical and scientific. Then your master, more quietly but with a new, steely conviction, presents the doctrine. He holds up a sprig of eyebright. Is it an accident, he asks the crowd, that this flower bears a perfect image of the human eye? Is God a careless artist, or is this a sign, left for us in his mercy? He holds up a walnut. Is it mere chance that this nut is a perfect model of the brain, or is it a divine instruction? The crowd murmurs. The appeal of the doctrine is visual, intuitive, and deeply personal. Hemlock's system of humors is an abstract, intellectual puzzle. Your master's system is a treasure hunt, a direct conversation with the Creator. Hemlock scoffs, a child's game of finding faces in the clouds. You would have us believe that a thorny plant is for a sharp pain. What's next? A long plant for a long life. It is madness. It is faith. Your master counters, faith that the world is not a chaotic accident, but a place of meaning and purpose. Your humors are invisible, unprovable. My signatures are here, for all to see. This argument perfectly encapsulates the debate that raged across Europe at the time. Was medicine a science of abstract principles, passed down through elite texts, the traditionalist view? Or was it an art of observation and interpretation, open to anyone with eyes to see the Paracelsus on view? Historians argue that this was more than just a medical debate. It was a reflection of the broader religious and social upheavals of the era. The challenge to the authority of ancient medical texts mirrored the challenge to the authority of the established church. It was a call for a more direct, personal relationship with knowledge, whether divine or medical. A man in the crowd, a tanner with chronically sore joints, steps forward. Master Hemlock, he says, you sold me a foul-smelling poultice that did nothing. But whose apprentice, he says, nodding to you, gave me one made from a knobby root that looked just like my knuckles, and my pain was eased. A woman adds, your leeching only made my daughter weaker. His tincture of red hawthorn berries seems to have given her strength. Hemlock is sputtering, his face turning a shade of red that even your master would have to classify as a Martian affliction. He has no answer to these personal testimonials. The abstract beauty of his for humor system is no match for the tangible, visible evidence of a signature, especially when it's attached to even a small, perceived success. The debate ends with no clear winner. But the tide has turned. Hemlock retreats to his shop. Fuming, your master stands a little taller. He has defended his new faith in the public square and found that the people are on his side. Later that day, back in the quiet of the apothecary, he looks at you. They see it. You know, he says softly, even if they do not know the words for it. They see the sense in it. He seems, for the first time since the failure of the tormental cure, at peace. He has picked a side. The shop is no longer a place of quiet hedging and experimentation. It is now a fortress of the new philosophy, standing in open defiance of the old. The war is far from over, but a major battle has been won. Having defended the doctrine in public, your master grows bolder, delving into the deeper, more esoteric corners of the philosophy. He begins to teach you about the most powerful and feared signature of all, the signature of the human from itself. He speaks in hushed tones of a root so potent, so deeply connected to humanity, that it must be handled with the utmost care. He speaks of the mandrake. The legends surrounding the mandrake root are as old as the hills. You have heard the whispers and tavern tales your whole life. It is the root that grows beneath the gallows, sprung from the bodily fluids of a hanged man. It is the root that, when pulled from the earth, lets out a shriek so terrible it can kill any man who hears it. It is the root that perfectly resembles the body of a man or a woman. Your master dismisses the more lurid tales as peasant superstition, but he affirms the core belief. The mandrake, or Mandragora officinor, does indeed have a large, fleshy, often forked prude that can, with a little imagination, look strikingly like a human figure. This, he explains, is no ordinary signature. It is the signature of signatures, a divine sign that this plant holds power over the entire human body. It is not just for the liver or the lungs. It is for life itself. It is considered a powerful anesthetic, a bringer of sleep and dreams, that cures for melancholy, and, most famously, a potent charm for fertility. To possess a mandrake root is to hold a small, earthen puppet of a human being, a direct line to the forces of vitality. The danger, your master explains, lies in its harvest. He tells you the proper way to do it, a method passed down through generations of cunning folk. You must not pull it yourself. You go to the plant at night. Under the correct astrological signs, you loosen the earth around it. Then, you tie a strong cord from the plant stem to the collar of a doll, preferably a black doll, as black is the color of Saturn, the planet that rules over such powerful and dangerous roots. You then retreat to a safe distance, plug your ears with wax, and throw a piece of meat. The dog, lunging for the meat, will pull the root from the ground. The dog will hear the shriek and perish. Unnecessary sacrifice, but you will be safe, and the magical root will be yours. Whether your master, or any sane person, actually practiced this elaborate and cruel ritual is a subject of great debate among historians. Many believe it was a clever story concocted by sellers of the valuable root to deter people from harvesting it themselves. So by keeping the price high, by making the process seem impossibly dangerous, they maintained a monopoly. It's a brilliant piece of marketing, wrapped in a terrifying legend. One day, a nervous-looking man comes to the shop. He is not a local. He carries a small, heavy sack. He asks for your master, and they disappear into the back room for a long time. When the man leaves, your master is holding a small, cloth-wrapped object with a reverence usually reserved for a holy relic. He unwraps it. There it is, a mandrake root. It's smaller than in the stories, about the length of your hand. It is dark and gnarled, and it is unmistakably shaped like a little man. Its forked root forming to stout legs. It even has smaller rootlets branching off in a way that suggests arms. It's uncanny and deeply unsettling. Your master tells you it is a male root, and that he paid a small fortune for it. He will not grind it or boil it. That would be a desecration. Instead, he cares for it. He lovingly cleans the dirt from its crevices with a soft brush. He dresses it in a tiny scrap of silk. He places it in a special box, lined with velvet, and keeps it in his locked cabinet. The root is not to be consumed. Its power is sympathetic. A woman wishing for a child will pay a fee to sleep with the box under her bed. A man suffering from a deep melancholy might be allowed to simply hold the root for a few moments, as if to absorb its vitality. The plant has transcended medicine and become a magical object. You look at the strange little man-root, nestled in its silk clothes. The Doctrine of Signatures has led you to this point, from a simple, brain-shaped nut to a talismansky being pulled from the earth by a sacrificial dog. The line between medicine, magic, and religion has completely dissolved. You have a strange thought. All the other signatures required you to see a resemblance. A leaf like a lung, a flower like an eye. But the mandrake is so famous, its legend so powerful, that you wonder if it works the other way around. People don't see a root that happens to look like a man. They see a man, and then they project that image onto the root. They are so desperate for a cure that looks like them, that holds power over their entire being, that they will carve a man out of a simple forked root if they have to. The signature is not in the plant. It's in the eye of the beholder. The acquisition of the mandrake root seems to open a new, stranger door in your master's practice. If a plant that looks like a man can hold power over the whole body, what other resemblances hold sway? The logic of the doctrine, once confined to the vegetable and mineral kingdoms, now spills over into the animal world, and things get decidedly weird. The principle is the same, like cures like, but the applications are more visceral. You learn not to treat a weakness. You must consume the strength of an animal known for that quality. It's a primal, ancient idea, now dressed up in the sophisticated language of signatures and planetary rulers. Your master begins to stock new, and frankly, unsettling ingredients. You are tasked with preparing crab's eyes, which are not eyes at all, but small, white, bead-like stones from the stomach of a crayfish, because crabs walk sideways and backwards. These stones are believed to be a powerful cure for indecision and for contrary illnesses that don't respond to normal treatment. The signature is one of movement and character. For courage, you are taught to powder the heart of a lion. A lion's heart is, of course, nearly impossible to acquire, so the heart of a brave doorbell is often substituted. The belief is that by ingesting the organ, the patient will absorb the animal's courage. It is the most direct form of sympathetic magic imaginable. Things grow more specific. To treat a breathing problem, like asthma, you might be instructed to use the lungs of a fox. Why a fox? Because a fox is known for its stamina and its ability to run for long distances without getting out of breath. The logic is poetic, even if the remedy itself is a bit grim. This is a part of the doctrine that many modern admirers tend to gloss over, but it was an integral part of the system for many practitioners. Historians often debate how widespread these animal-based cures were. Were they common practice? Or were they the exotic, expensive remedies reserved for the desperate and the very wealthy? The evidence suggests a bit of both. While lion hearts were rare, remedies using more common animals, foxes, rabbits, chickens, were likely a part of many apothecaries' arsenals. One of the most elaborate animal signatures you learn is for epilepsy, the falling sickness. The cure is the skull of a man who has died of violent, sudden death, but has not been buried. The skull is to be scraped, and the scrapings powdered and given to the patient. The grim logic is that a man who died so quickly did not have time for his vital spirit to dissipate. His skull, therefore, retains a powerful charge of life force, which can shock the epileptic patient's system back into order. It's a terrifying thought, blending the doctrine with a kind of necromantic and folk medicine. You are not required to scrape any skulls. Thankfully, your work is more mundane, but no less strange. You spend one afternoon rendering fat from a bear. Bear grease is considered a sovereign remedy for hair loss. based on the simple observation that bears are very hairy animals. The signature is simple and compelling. To grow hair, use the fat of something hairy. You also learn to prepare a powder from dried earthworms. After rain, the earthworms emerge from the ground, seeming to unblock the earth. Therefore, they are a signature for unblocking the human body, used for everything from constipation to clearing the sinuses. Then there is the woodlouse, a tiny insect that rolls itself into a perfect ball when threatened. This pill bug is seen as a signature for anything that can be rolled up and swallowed. The bugs are dried and powdered, and then, in a moment of sublime irony, they are mixed with honey and rolled into little pills. A bug that looks like a pill becomes a pill. It's a perfect, self-contained loop of logic. You look at the new jars on the shelves. Powdered crayfish stones next to the bear grease. Dried wood ice next to a dusty fox lung. The apothecary, once a place of fragrant herbs and flowers, now has a faint, game-wise smell. The beautiful, elegant doctrine has led you to this. It has forced you to see the world not just as a garden, but as a great, living anatomy lesson, where every creature, from the noble lion to the humble woodlouse, holds a potential cure in its very flesh and bones. You find yourself looking at the stray dog that sleeps in the alley, not as a dog, but as a collection of potential signatures, its loyalty, its keen sense of smell, its swiftness. It's a disquieting way to see the world. The poetic beauty of finding an eye in a flower has been replaced by the brutal pragmatism of finding a cure for cowardice in the heart of a bull. The doctrine, you realize, is not always pretty. Just as you feel you've mastered the sprawling, chaotic curriculum of the doctrine, from planetary herbs to animal parts, a new kind of knowledge arrives in town. It doesn't come in the form of a secret whispered by a traveler or a legend about a route. It arrives as a book, but it's a book unlike any you have ever seen. A young, ambitious physician, a rival to both your master and old hymnal, sets up a practice across the town square. He is newly returned from the great universities in Italy, and he brings with him a copy of a revolutionary text, De Humani Corporis Fabricae, on the fabric of the human body, by a man named Andreas Vesalius. Word of the book's illustrations spreads through the town like wildfire. They are said to be terrifyingly, miraculously accurate, not the crude, symbolic blobs that pass for organs in your own text, but detailed, precise, and beautiful drawings of the human body as it truly is. One day, you get a chance to see it for yourself. The young physician, eager to show off his modern credentials, leaves the book open on a lectern in his waiting area. You make an excuse to deliver a package to a nearby shop and steal a glance through his open doorway. What you see stops you in your tracks. The page is open to a drawing of the human liver. It is not the simple, three-lobed shape of the liver would leave you how so carefully collected. It is a large, complex, asymmetrical organ, a smooth, dark mass tucked under a cage of exquisitely rendered ribs. It looks nothing like the signature. You feel a cold knot forming in your stomach. You catch a glimpse of another page, the heart. It is not a neat, four-chambered tomato. It is a muscular, fist-shaped organ, wrapped in fat and tangled in a web of veins and arteries. It is powerful and messy and looks nothing at all like a rose or a hawthorn berry. Another page shows the brain. It is not the neat, tidy form of a walnut. It is a beautifully complex, deeply folded landscape of grey tissue, a universe of wrinkles and fissures. The book is a work of art, but it is a terrifying one. Vesalius and his artists had done something radical and, in many circles, forbidden. They had dissected human bodies. They hadn't relied on the ancient texts of Galen, who had based his human anatomy on the dissection of apes and pigs. They had looked with their own eyes, and the truth they found was ugly. It was complicated. It did not fit the neat, poetic patterns of the Doctrine of Signatures. This book represents a historical turning point. It is the beginning of modern observational anatomy, A science based on looking rather than reading, on evidence rather than elegance. The beautiful, symbolic body of the doctrine, where every part corresponded to a plan to a planet, was being replaced by a complex, biological machine. Historians argue about how quickly this new knowledge spread. For a long time, the revolutionary findings of Vesalius coexisted with the old beliefs. A doctor might accept the new anatomical drawings but continue to prescribe remedies based on signatures, unable or unwilling to connect the two. The human mind's capacity to hold to contradictory ideas at once is a marvel. You return to your own apothecary, and the world looks different. The neatly organized shelves, the liver shelf, the heart shelf, the brain shelf, suddenly seem like a child's fantasy. You look at the jar of walnuts, and for the first time, you see not a miniature brain, but just a nut. You look at the liver with leaves, and you see not a tiny liver, but just a leaf. The divine, hidden language of God that you had so proudly learned to read now seems like a fiction. The map you had been following has been replaced by a new one, a map of messy, inconvenient, and undeniable facts. Your master, of course, dismisses the new book. The work of the grave robber, he scoffs. An artist's fancy. He draws what he wants to see, but his dismissal is defensive. He has heard the whispers. He knows the power of those images. He is a man whose entire worldview is built on symbolic resemblances, and this book proves that the resemblances are wrong. You are caught in the middle. You have seen the truth with your own eyes, however briefly. You can't unsee the liver as it truly is. But your entire training, your whole sense of purpose, is tied to the beautiful lie. You are grinding herbs with the mortar and pestle, the familiar, rhythmic work, a small comfort in your confusion. You are grinding lungwort, the lichens that so perfectly resembles the branching airways of the lungs. But the image in your head is no longer the pretty signature. It's a fleeting memory of another of Vesalius's drawings, a detailed, clinical rendering of the real thing, and they look nothing alike. The pestle in your hand feels heavier, and the wort, for the first time, feels hollow. The conflict between the two maps of the body, the poetic one of signatures and the clinical one of Vesalius, is no longer an abstract, intellectual problem. It arrives at your door in the most personal and devastating way possible. Your master falls ill. It begins subtly. A weariness he blames on his age, a shortness of breath he attributes to the summer humidity, but it worsens. A persistent, rattling cough develops. He grows pale, and his face takes on a gaunt, hollowed-out look. He, the great healer, the reader of signs, is now the patient, and he is terrified. At first, he treats himself with the full force of the doctrine. He is the physician, and he knows the signatures. For his lungs, he takes a strong tea of lungwort lichens, the Jupiter-ruled herb that should strengthen them. He smokes smolline leaves to soothe the irritation. He eats almonds, the long-shaped nuts, by the handful. He consults his astrological charts, ensuring every remedy is taken at the most auspicious time. He does everything right. He follows the divine instructions to the letter. And he gets worse. His confidence begins to fray. Replaced by a quiet, desperate fear, he moves on to the more aggressive cures. He tries a foul-smelling poultice of foxglove, a Martian remedy to shock his system back to health. It does nothing but fill the apothecary with a grim odor. His breathing becomes more labored, each word an effort. You are his hands now, preparing the remedies he can no longer make himself. You watch him, this man who was once a titan of knowledge in your eyes, shrink before you. You bring him a cup of lungwort tea, and he looks at it with a mixture of hope and despair. The signature is perfect. Why isn't it working? One evening, as you are helping him to bed, he is seized by a terrible fit of coughing. It leaves him gasping for air, clutching his chest. When the fit subsides, he looks at you, his eyes wide with a fear that is beyond pride. The young doctor, he rasps, each word a struggle. The man with the book, fetch him. It is the ultimate surrender, the moment the high priest of one religion asks for the rights of another. You run. You pound on the door of the young physician. The vessel yearn, your heart hammering against your ribs. He comes with you, carrying his leather bag and a serious, professional demeanor. He enters the sick room, which smells of old herbs and failed hopes, and it feels like the future walking into the past. He doesn't ask about planetary rulers or signatures. He asks simple, direct questions. When did the cough start? Is there pain? He listens to your master's chest, not with a crystal, but by placing his ear directly against his back. A simple, practical technique. He looks at the color of your master's fingernails. He examines the flame he has coughed up. He is not reading signs. He is collecting data. After a long, silent examination, he gives his diagnosis. It is not an imbalance of the humors or a planetary affliction. He uses a no, calmed word. A word for a disease of the lungs that wastes a man away from the inside. He calls it consumption. And his proposed treatment is a shock. He has no miracle cure. He speaks of rest, of clean air, of nourishing food. Not food chosen for its shape, but for its simple ability to provide strength. He leaves a small bottle of a dark, bitter liquid. It is a tincture of opium. He says quietly, it will not cure him, but it will ease the cough, and let him rest. This is a profound and devastating moment, a turning point that historians of medicine see as the slow dawn of a new era. The goal of the young doctor is not a dramatic, magical cure, but a pragmatic management of symptoms. He is offering comfort, not a miracle. He is admitting the limits of his own knowledge, something your master, in his prime, would never have done. The opium doesn't work because it's ruled by a certain planet or looks like a certain organ. It works because of its observable, chemical effect on the body. It is medicine without a story, without a poem. It is just medicine. You are left alone with your master. He has a choice. On his bedside table sits a cup of his meticulously prepared lungwort tea, the perfect signature. Next to it is the small vial of opium, the cold, practical remedy of the new science. It is a choice between a beautiful, comforting idea and a harsh, observable reality. He looks up the tea, then at the vial. With a trembling hand, he pushes the tea away and reaches for the opium. In that small gesture, an entire worldview crumbles. He has chosen to ease his pain, rather than trust in a divine sign that has failed him. He is choosing fact over faith. And you, watching him, feel both a deep sorrow for the death of a beautiful idea and a strange, cold glimmer of a new kind of hope. Your master does not recover. The opium gives him periods of calm, of restful, dream-filled sleep, but the consumption has taken too deep a hold. The apothecary, once a bustling hub of remedies and consultations, becomes a quiet sick room. The day-to-day running of the shop falls to you. You find yourself in a strange limbo. Your teacher, the man who built his world on the doctrine of signatures, has tacitly abandoned it in his own hour of need. And yet, the customers who come to the door still believe. They still ask for the eyebright for their eyes and the walnuts for their head. They want the comfort of the old stories, the reassurance of a world where God has left them clues. And so you give it to them. You sell them the remedies. You explain the signatures. You perform the role of the apothecary as they expect it. But your heart is no longer in it. You feel like an actor in a play you no longer believe in. One afternoon, a young woman comes in. She is newly married and anxious for a child. She has heard the stories of the merchant's wife, and she asks, in a hushed, hopeful voice, if she can have the lunar remedy, the one prepared under the full moon to grant fertility. You look at her eager, hopeful face, and you feel a pang of something you can't quite name. Pity, guilt. You know the herbs in the remedy have no special power. You know the moon's light imparts no magic. But you also know that the young physician across the square would have nothing to offer her but a shrug and perhaps some sensible advice about diet. He has no cure for hope. So you prepare it for her. You go through the motions. You take the silvery lunaria pods and the seeds of the evening primrose. You tell her, as you were told, that you will set them out under the light of the next full moon. You are selling her a story, a ritual, a handful of hope. A few months later, she returns to the shop, her face glowing. She is with child. She thanks you with tears in her eyes, pressing a silver coin into your hand. It was the moon herbs, she whispers. It was your master's magic. You stand there, the coin cold in your palm, and a new, startling thought takes root in your mind. What if the cure worked? But not for the reason you thought. What if the active ingredient wasn't the herb, but the woman's own profound belief in it? You start to see it everywhere. You think of the stonemason with the head injury. He was given the walnut paste. Yes, but he was also sent home to rest in a quiet, dark room for a week. Was it the walnuts that cured him, or the rest? Or was it his belief in the walnuts that allowed him to rest, confident that he was being healed? You think of the nobleman's son, whose heart palpitations were eased by the foxglove. The plant is genuinely potent, a true drug. But how much of its success was amplified by the family's faith in the apothecary's daring, near magical remedy? This is the birth of an idea that will one day have a name, the placebo effect. It's a concept that historians and medical ethicists still grapple with. How do you measure the power of belief? If a patient gets better from a cure that is biologically inert, has a healing occurred? The followers of the Doctrine of Signatures, without ever intending to, were conducting one of the largest, longest-running placebo trials in human history. The beautiful, intricate system of signs and stories was the perfect delivery mechanism for the most powerful medicine of all, the patient's own hope. You look at the rows of jars in the apothecary. You no longer see them as a library of divine cures. You see them as a collection of props. Each one, the lung-shaped lichens, the eye-like flower, the heart-red berry, is a tool for focusing a person's belief, for mobilizing their own internal resources for healing. Your master, in his lucid moments, seems to be thinking along the same lines. One evening, he watches you prepare a simple chamomile tea for a neighbor with a nervous stomach. The flower looks like a sun, he murmurs, his voice a dry whisper. We told them it would bring sunshine to their soul. He pauses, then adds, perhaps, sometimes, it did. It is a quiet, profound confession. An admission that perhaps the magic was not in the plants, but in the telling. You begin to practice a new kind of medicine, a two-leveled medicine. On the surface, you are the traditional apothecary, speaking of signatures and planetary rulers, but underneath, you are doing something else. You are observing the patient. You are listening. You are trying to understand their fear and their hope. You are prescribing not just an herb, but a story that you think will best comfort them. You are no longer a reader of God's signs. You are becoming a student of the human mind. The cure, you are beginning to suspect, lies not in the book of nature, but in the complex, mysterious, and powerful landscape of belief itself. The passing of your master is a quiet affair. He slips away one morning in his sleep. The vial of opium on his bedside table, the unused cup of lungwort tea gathering dust. The apothecary's shop, which was his entire world, now falls to you. You are no longer the apprentice. You are the master. But the world you inherit is not the one you were trained for. The confident, monolithic reign of the Doctrine of Signatures is over. It hasn't vanished overnight, but it has begun a slow, inexorable fade, like a vibrant tapestry left out in the sun for too long. The young physician across the square, with his Vesalian anatomy and his pragmatic remedies, gains more and more followers. People are beginning to trust the evidence of their own eyes and the cold logic of observed results over the poetic beauty of ancient signs. The word consumption is spoken more often than planetary affliction. The idea of contagion, of tiny, invisible seeds of disease passing from one person to another, begins to take root. a concept for which the doctrine has no answer. You find yourself practicing a hybrid form of medicine, caught between two ages. For the older customers, for those who grew up with the old stories, you are still the keeper of the secrets. You dispense the hawthorn berries for the heart and the comfrey for the bones. You speak of Jupiter and Venus. You are selling them a comfort, a continuity with the world they have always known. But for the younger generation, and for the more serious, life-threatening ailments, you find yourself quietly adopting the new ways. You no longer smoke out a room with herbs to cleanse it. You wash the floors and dare the bedding. You rely on simple, observable remedies, willow bark for fever, opium for pain, gentle broths for strength. You are slowly, unconsciously, separating the drugs that work from the drugs that merely have a good story. The doctrine of signatures doesn't die. It just retreats. It moves from the world of professional medicine into the world of folk belief. It becomes the wisdom of grandmothers, the stuff of almanacs and garden lore. It is no longer a science, but kind of poetry of the earth. This transition is a subject of great interest to historians. There was no single moment when a switch was flipped. For centuries, the two systems, the symbolic and the scientific, coexisted and intermingled. A doctor might learn the latest chemical theories at university, but still advise a patient to eat walnuts for their brain, not even consciously realizing the ancient, symbolic roots of that advice. The doctrine's intuitive, visual appeal was just too strong to be erased completely. One day, a traveling merchant tries to sell you a guaranteed mandrake root. He winks and tells you a lurid tale about a black dog and a moonless night. You look at the root. It's a piece of common bryony, cleverly carved to look like a little man. A few years ago, you might have been fooled, or at least intrigued. Now, you just see a cheap fraud. You send the man away. The magic has gone. The apothecary itself begins to change. You find you are ordering fewer exotic, story-laden ingredients and more of the simple, reliable ones. The shelf of animal cures. The fox slungs and bear grease gathers dust. You quietly dispose of them one day, feeling a sense of relief. A child comes in with a case of jaundice. The mother asks for the yellow cure, the celandine and turmeric that have been the standard for a generation. You give it to her, because to refuse would be cruel, but you also give her simple, practical advice, the kind the vessel young doctor might give: rest, plenty of water, and a bland, nourishing diet. You are treating both the mother's belief in the child's body, walking a fine line between the old world and the new. You are living through the fading of a dream, and it is a bittersweet experience. You feel a sense of loss for the beauty, the coherence, the sheer elegance of the old way. You miss the feeling of being a detective, of reading a divine, secret language. The new medicine of observation and chemistry is powerful, but it is also cold. It has less room for wonder, less room for poetry. It can set a bone and soothe a fever, but it has a harder time mending a broken heart or giving hope to the hopeless. You stand in the quiet of your shop at dusk, the jars of herbs casting long shadows on the walls. They are no longer a library of divine signatures. They are becoming something else, a collection of chemicals, a catalogue of observable effects. The dream is ending, and the bright, cold, complicated light of a new morning is beginning to dawn. Years pass. The world changes, and you change with it. The young vessel young doctor is now a respected elder, and you are the town's grizzled, long-serving apothecary. Your hair is streaked with grey, and your hands are permanently stained with the faint scent of chamomile and willow bark. The fierce debates of your youth have softened into accepted history. The doctrine of signatures, as a formal medical system, is all but gone. No serious physician would speak of planetary rulers, and the idea of treating a liver ailment with a liver-shaped leaf is now met with ridicule in the universities. The world has moved on to theories of germs and chemistry, of circulation and respiration. Medicine is a science of the visible and the measurable. And yet, The ghost of the doctrine lingers. It has survived, not in the lecture halls, but in the kitchens and gardens, in the quiet corners of everyday life. You see its echoes everywhere, like faint, persistent after images. A young mother comes into the shop to buy honey for her child's cough. "And I'll add a bit of lemon," she says, to cut through the phlegm. She doesn't know she is echoing the ancient humoral theory of fighting a cold condition with a hot one. She just knows it's what her mother always did. A farmer buys a bag of your most popular salve, a mix of calendula and comfrey. He uses it for everything from chapped hands to sores on his cattle. "It's good stuff," he says. "That bright orange flower, it just looks healthy." He doesn't know about the doctrine, but he's responding to a signature of color, an intuitive sense that a vibrant plant must impart vibrancy. The most powerful echo, you notice, is in the foods people still associate with health. Walnuts are still brain food. Celery, with its long, bone-like stalks, is still said to be good for the joints. Artichoke hearts are for the heart. Pomegranates, with their toothy seeds, are for the gums. These are no longer medical prescriptions, but dietary folklore passed down through generations. The original, magical reasoning has been forgotten, but the conclusion remains, embedded in the culture like a fossil in a rock. Historians would have a term for this, a cultural hangover. An idea so powerful and intuitive that it outlives the intellectual framework that created it. The doctrine of signatures was so good at creating memorable, sticky ideas that its ghosts still haunt our modern language and folk wisdom. We still talk about liver spots on the skin. We eat hearty meals. The language of signatures is baked into our own. One day, you are helping your own apprentice, a bright, curious young lad who asks far too many questions, sort through a new delivery of herbs. He holds up a carrot. "It's true, isn't it?" he asks, "that if you slice it, it looks like an eye, and that they are good for your sight?" You smile. Here it is again. The signature. It's a remarkably persistent one. You explain to him that yes, carrots do contain a substance that is good for the health of the eyes, but that the resemblance is just a coincidence. He looks disappointed. The coincidence is a much better story. It's more magical, more meaningful. You realize that the doctrine's enduring power lies in its appeal to our narrative-hungry minds. We want the world to make sense. We want the cure to look like the disease. We want the key to be shaped like the lock. The new science, with its invisible chemicals and its complicated, Latinate names, is powerful, but it's not a very good story. The doctrine of signatures was, above all else, a magnificent story. You even find yourself falling back on its logic when tending your own small garden behind the shop. You find yourself planting the cherry yellow calendula next to the melancholy dark leaf herbs, as if they could balance each other out. It's a habit, a way of seeing the world that is too deeply ingrained to ever fully erase. The doctrine has become a kind of gentle dream from which the world is slowly awakening. It was a dream of a world filled with meaning, where every plant was a divine message of hope, a world where God had signed his love onto the face of every leaf and flower. It was, you think, a beautiful dream, and like all powerful dreams, it has left its mark on the waking world, in the quiet, unconscious habits and beliefs of the people who walk its streets. The echoes are everywhere, if you just know how to listen for them. One rainy afternoon, with no customers to attend to and the steady drumming of water on the roof tiles filling the quiet shop, you decide to clear out an old, dusty chest that has sat in the corner for as long as you can remember. It was your master's, filled with papers and books he hadn't looked at in decades. Now, it is yours. You lift the heavy lid, and the scent of old paper and dried herbs rises to meet you. The smell of your own past. Inside, beneath stacks of old invoices and almanacs, you find it. It's a small, yeast-bound notebook. Its cover warped by time and moisture. Your apprentice notebook. You run your thumb over the cover, then open it. The pages are filled with your own youthful, slightly clumsy handwriting. And on every other page, there is a drawing. You had forgotten about the drawings in your first flush of excitement after learning the doctrine. You had set out to create your own personal field guide, your own catalogue of God's clues. You turn the pages slowly, and your long life in the apothecary scrolls by before your eyes. There, on the first page, is a detailed, loving drawing of a walnut kernel. You had spent hours on it, trying to capture every ridge and fold. Beneath it, in your most careful script, you had written, "The walnut, a signature for the brain, the melancholy humors, ruled by the sun." You remember the thrill of discovery, the feeling that you had cracked a profound secret of the universe. Now, you just see a simple nut. You turn the page. A delicate, colored drawing of the eyebright flower, with its yellow pupil and its purple veins. You had been so proud of that one. You remember showing it to a scholar with sore eyes, the drawing serving as a more powerful testament than any words you could have spoken. Page after page, the ghosts of your education greet you, a bleeding tormental root, its red sap rendered in rusty ink, a sprig of lungwort, its spongy, long-white texture carefully shaded, a silvery, moon-like pod, an old, round-shaped mandrake, copied from a woodcut in a book, looking far more dramatic than the sad little root your master had actually owned. Each drawing is a testament to a beautiful idea. Each one is a work of faith, a detailed, artistic rendering of a profound and elegant lie. This moment is one many people experience in their lives, though perhaps not so literally. It is the moment you confront the passionate, deeply held beliefs of your younger self from the vantage point of age and experience. It's the discovery of old letters, old photographs, old ideas that were once the center of your universe. Historians who study the personal journals of physicians from this transitional era often find this same mix of nostalgia, embarrassment, and a gentle fondness for their own past naivete. You look at the drawings, and you don't feel foolish. You feel a strange sense of tenderness for the boy who drew them, the boy who so desperately wanted the world to be an ordered, meaningful, and merciful place. He wasn't stupid. He was hopeful. Your own apprentice comes in from the back room, wiping his hands on his apron. He peers over your shoulder at the open notebook. "What's that, master?" "Just an old book," you say. He points to the drawing of the lungwort. "Oh, the lung cure," he says, smiling. "The old wives still ask for that one sometimes." He says it with the gentle condescension of youth, the easy dismissal of an idea he has never had to believe in. To him, it's just a quaint superstition. He has no idea that for you, for your master, it was once a sacred text. It was science. It was truth. He looks at the page with the mandrake and the screaming root. "Did you ever see a real one, master? Did you use a dog to pull it up?" He grins, expecting a funny story. You look down at the drawing of the little man root. "No," you say softly, "I never did." After he leaves, you continue to turn the pages. You see the pressed flowers, now faded and brittle, that you are tucked between the pages. You see the notes you had taken on planetary rulers, the complex charts and diagrams. It was a whole world, an entire universe of knowledge, condensed into this one small book, a universe that no longer exists. You close the notebook. For a moment, you consider throwing it into the fire. It is, after all, a book of errors, a catalogue of mistakes. But you can't bring yourself to do it. It is not just a book of lies. It is a record of a search, a testament to the profound human need to find meaning in a chaotic world. It is a map of a beautiful, imaginary country, and you were once one of its most devoted citizens. You place the book back in the chest and close the lid, leaving the illustrated lie to rest in the quiet dark. The years spool out behind you, and your life settles into a quiet rhythm. The apothecary is no longer a place of frantic debate or revolutionary fervor. It is a calm harbor, a fixture in the town as steady as the church spire. You have seen generations born and pass away. You have seen theories of medicine rise and fall like the summer fashions. And oh, in the twilight of your own life, you find your greatest solace not in a book or a doctrine, but in a small patch of earth behind the shop. You have a garden. It is a simple, practical garden. You grow the herbs you still use in the apothecary. The reliable chamomile for sleep, the mint for digestion, the willow for fevers. But you also grow other things you have no professional use for, but which you have come to know as old friends. You find a sunny corner for a single, magnificent sunflower. You watch it turn its face to the sun each day, and you remember your master teaching you that it was a plant of the sun, good for the heart and for vitality. You no longer believe that, not in a literal sense, but you cannot deny that looking at its bright, open face does, in fact, make your own spirits feel a little brighter. The signature was wrong, but the effect, in its own gentle way, is true. You plant a patch of eyebright along the stone wall. You don't make it into eye drops anymore. You know that clean water works just as well. But sometimes you crouch down and look at the tiny, perfect flowers with their little yellow pupils. You admire them not as a divine instruction, but as a simple, beautiful accident of nature. A small, miraculous coincidence. Your garden is a place of humility. In your youth, you saw the world of plants as a library of cures, a resource to be plundered for human use. Now, you see it as a community of living things, each with its own purpose, most of which have nothing to do with you. The lungwort lichens on the old oak tree isn't there to cure your cough. It is there for its own reasons, living its own slow, strange life. This realization isn't a loss, but a relief. You are no longer the center of the story. You are just a part of it. This final stage of your journey reflects a broader shift in human thought. The ultimate failure of the Doctrine of Signatures was a lesson in humility. It taught us that nature is not a mirror, reflecting back our own needs and diseases. It is a thing in itself, complex, mysterious, and indifferent. The effort to understand it requires not just poetic leaps of faith, but patient observation, skepticism, and the willingness to be wrong. Historians might argue that the doctrine, for all its flaws, was a necessary step. It forced people to look closely at the natural world, to observe, catalogue, and speculate. It was a kind of proto-science, a romantic first draft that had to be written before the colder, more accurate revision could begin. One summer evening, your apprentice's child, a little girl with bright, curious eyes, comes into the garden. She points to a vine with heart-shaped leaves. "That's for love, isn't it?" she asks. It's something her grandmother must have told her. You smile. You could correct her. You could explain that the shape of a leaf has no bearing on its properties. You could give her a lecture on the slow, painful process by which humanity unlearned these pretty fictions. But you don't. Instead, you kneel down beside her. "Yes," you say, "it has a heart, so you must be very kind to it." In that moment, you understand the final, enduring truth of the Doctrine of Signatures. It was not a science, it was a system of ethics. It was a way of teaching people to see the world as a sacred, interconnected place, filled with meaning and purpose. It was a way of encouraging a kinship between the human body and the green, growing wild outside. The theory was wrong in every detail, but this central, poetic impulse, to see a relationship, to feel a connection, to treat the world with a gentle, observant reverence, was perhaps not so wrong at all. You look at the little girl, gently touching the heart-shaped leaf, and you, the old apothecary, who has seen the rise and fall of a whole universe of ideas, find yourself content in this quiet garden, a garden built not on the certainty of divine cures, but on the simple, humble wisdom of knowing that some things are beautiful, even if they aren't true. And so, the story of the great doctrine, with all its beautiful mistakes and accidental wisdom, begins to soften and dissolve. The sharp edges of fact and failure blur, giving way to a gentler, more dreamlike impression. You might feel yourself drifting now, floating in that quiet space between the story and your own emerging dreams. There is no need to hold on to the names, the herbs, or the theories. They were just stepping stones on a path, leading you to this peaceful place of rest. Let the images fade like old ink on a page. The walnut that looked like a brain, the flower that healed an eye, the silvery seed pod that shone like the moon. They are all just whispers now, mingling with the stillness of your room, becoming part of the quiet fabric of the night. The curtain falls on this peaceful scene, for those still in the audience. The next play is ready to begin whenever you are. Good night.